This is Rebel Heart Rose here. Getting ready to read some more in the further adventures of Xena, Warrior Princess. This is part 3. I have my SO's picture. My partner's picture is the bookmark. Okay. This one's called Tame the Dawn. Written by Esther Fresner. The temple stood at the bottom of a small green dell, far removed from the major trade roads, and a goodly distance off the rough goat track. Xena and Gabrielle had chosen in an evil hour. They almost passed it by, for it was nestled away snugly in the heart of a grove of aged willows. In winter it might have been more conspicuous when the whipple-slim branches were bare, but this was spring, and the little building's smooth walls and slender columns were painted the same tender green as the newly uncurled willow leaves. It was only pure accident that they caught sight of it. Xena was in a hurry, and the goat track was thwarting her at every turn. Although the local terrain only consisted of moderate-sized hills and valleys, the path behaved as though it were leading them through the harsh heart of the Spartan Mountains. Sometimes it curved back on itself like a fishhook. Sometimes it took a sharp turn and headed straight up the side of a hill only to change its mind, make an about face, and take them right back down again. Sometimes it seemed to vomit chunks of stone directly under their feet, then reverted to sand so soft they sank in it up to their ankles. Xena took it all in stride, literally, but for Gabrielle, this supposed shortcut to Thebes of the Seven Gates was turning into the road to Marathon. When she twisted her foot on a particularly rocky stretch and snapped the strap of her left sandal, it was the last straw. It was while she knelt to fix the broken leather that she spied the temple. "So what?" said Xena when Gabrielle pointed it out. "But Xena, isn't it beautiful?" Gabrielle exclaimed. "It's exquisite, a perfect gem of a building. And look at how well it harmonizes with its setting." "Harmonizes or hides?" Xena snorted. "When a place or a person tries so hard to fade into the background, there's usually a good reason. I can name you at least 15 venomous desert reptiles that do nothing all day but blend into the sand and bite the fools who just have to get a closer look at them. What they get is a closer look at the inside of Charon's boat when he ferries them to Hades. Oh, for goodness sake, Xena, poison snakes aren't the only creatures that keep themselves hidden. True, so do mice, but only so the snakes can't catch them. Let it go, Gabrielle. We've got places to be, Nosing around a strange temple will only take up valuable time. You're not the least bit curious? Gabrielle asked. I'm not. Xena's teeth flashed momentarily in a provoking grin. But I can tell that you are. So we'll explore it? So we'll explore it? Gabrielle hastily finished repairing her sandal strap and bounced eagerly to her feet, just long enough to find out whose temple it is. It won't take long. Not a chance. We're due in Thieves in 3 days. Thieves is only a 2-day march from here, Gabriel protested. 2 days to get there, 1 day to find out which of those damn 7 gates they've got open. That paranoid idiot King Creon keeps changing it. He's almost as obsessed with security as he is with punctuality. Now come on. Xena turned her back on Gabrielle and started up the goat track again. Seeing that the direct approach wasn't going to work, Gabrielle switched tactics. If we're so pressed for time, we could use directions to a better road. I don't ask for directions, Xena growled. No, you just take shortcuts like this one. There is no better road to Thebes, short of the main highway, and that would take 4 days' travel. How much do you want to bet that the locals know a route to Thebes from here that's better and shorter? What locals? Where there's a temple, there are priests. Gabrielle folded her arms. QED. What does that mean? I don't know, Gabrielle shrugged. Something Julius Caesar once said. He never asked directions either. You're a lot like him. Don't ever say that about me, Xena gritted. Well, what else can I say? He won't ask directions. You won't ask directions. I'll ask your damn directions. Watch me. Without another word, Xena marched down the hillside double time, bound for the willow veiled temple, while Gabrielle trotted after, struggling to keep up and to cover her grin of triumph. The temple grove was a sweet refuge of shade and fresh water after the heat and dust of the goat track. A modest stream laced its way around the roots of the willows, and a gentle wind played through their branches. Gabrielle didn't know whether she was more enchanted with the temple itself or the ground surrounding it. She looked everywhere, exclaiming over fresh attractions, while Xena headed straight into the temple in search of help. Always in a hurry, Gabrielle muttered, watching Xena vault up the well-swept marble steps and vanish into the temple. She never takes time to stop and smell the roses. What roses? Said a high, whiny voice behind her. Gabrielle whirled around, her staff ready for a battle, and found herself looking right over the head of a curly-haired little boy who was diligently searching one nostril with a busy finger. The child didn't seem to be more than 5 or 6 yet. He had a truculent, truculent look that was somehow too old for him. I asked, what roses? He repeated. There aren't any roses here. All she lets them grow anywhere near her temple are morning glories. It's worse than tedious. It's egotistical. But what can you expect of a minor goddess like Eos? All that light and none of it ever reaches her brain. He removed his finger from one nostril and switched it to the other. Eos? Gabriel asked, so this is the temple of the dawn goddess. Bravo! The boy stopped picking his nose long enough to give her some very measured, very sarcastic applause. And for your second question, can you tell me where they fought the Battle of Salamis? I'll give you a hint. It wasn't in a butcher shop. Gabrielle frowned. You're a very rude child. Rude? Me? The boy opened his eyes as wide as he could and struck an offended pose worthy of an Athenian actor. I am shocked. Shocked! Do you hear? To learn that a woman of your obvious mental gifts finds me less than a perfect gentleman. This reminds me. Um, he concluded this speech by making a vulgar sound with his tongue and skipping away. Wait a minute! Come back here! Gabrielle called after the odd little boy in vain. He had vanished into a thick stand of bushes. She followed, breaking through the scratchy shoots and branches into a sun-drenched clearing. In the middle of the grassy expanse, a shallow fountain leaped and bubbled, washed over by the statue of a nymph. Her arms were full of small, chubby-limbed children, and a host of others clung to her skirts, their plump little hands reaching up to her in supplication. Gabrielle was captivated and came closer to get a better look. It was only when she leaned right against the lip of the fountain that she saw the expression on the nymph's carved face. The artist who'd create his work had known how to make solid stone show desperation, anxiety, and panic. On further inspection, the little ones ringing the nymph didn't appear to be holding up their hands in some childish appeal for attention. Rather, they looked like a pack of miniature wolves, bent on tearing her to pieces. Gabrielle shuddered so hard she almost lost her balance on the fountain's rim. Careful you don't fall in, darling. Another juvenile voice, different from the first, sounded at her elbow. She glanced down at a second boy, a blond cherub with a winning smile. He couldn't have been older than 4. I wouldn't want anything to happen to such a beautiful lady. Gabrielle was instantly charmed. She squatted beside the fountain and stroked his cheek. Thank you, dear, she said. Aren't you thoughtful? Do you live here? Now I do. He put one arm around her neck and began to play with her hair. Oh, you're pretty. Can I sit in your lap? Gabrielle saw no harm in it. She sat on the grass and the little boy cuddled up, hugging her tightly around her waist. My, you're an affectionate one, she said, a doubtful note creeping into her voice. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something about the child's behavior was starting to make her feel uneasy. What's your name? Orlo. He gave her a surprisingly powerful squeeze. Will you be my friend? Why, of course, I will. Tell me, Orlo, do your parents serve in the temple? Could you help me find them? You see, I'm traveling with a friend of mine, and we need to reach Thebes as soon as possible. And Orlo looked up at her, his soft little face, the mask of tragedy. You can't go away, he whimpered. Everyone goes away. Everyone leaves me behind, alone, in the dark, and I'm so small and helpless. Honestly, I am. You said you were my friend. Yes, dear, but I really have to. I don't have anybody but you. He sobbed, covering his face. He made enough noise to be weeping his heart out. But Gabrielle had the sneaking suspicion that his eyes were dust dry. I'm just a little boy and I'm scared of all the monsters under my bed. They give me terrible, bad dreams, and I need someone just like you to keep me company, and you can't leave me now. Can't you stay here just one night with me? I'll let you have the best pillow. What you'll let her have is the truth, Orlo. The air above the fountain shimmered, and a female voice flooded the clearing. Clad in filmy robes of purple, pink, and saffron, crowned with radiant golden hair, glorious with youth and beauty, the dawn goddess Eos appeared before them. Orlo let out a little yelp and scampered off. The goddess laughed and extended one rosy fingered hand. You'll have to forgive my sweet little Orlo, she said as she helped Gabrielle to her feet. He's terribly naughty, but he can't do you any harm. I didn't think he could, Gabrielle replied. I hope you won't find me presumptuous, oh Eos, but I believe you're going to have a problem with that boy. He strikes me as just a little too mature for his age. Eos laughed until the dew ran down her cheeks. Orlo? Mature? She finally managed. There are times when he acts like a 16-year-old, and him a man of 25. 16? Gabrielle repeated, nonplussed. 25? A man? But he doesn't look. And he's not my son. He's my seventh husband. Inside the temple of Eos, Xena was fast coming to the end of her patience. First, she explored the outer chamber, where the worshippers could congregate, when the smaller inner chamber that housed the image and altar of the goddess, both were deserted. Where there's a temple, there are priests, she muttered. QED. She was about to leave in frustration when she noticed three doors in the rearmost wall. She was ready to swear on her chakram that they hadn't been there long before. The first opened to reveal a storeroom full of charcoal, incense, and other supplies for the tending of the goddess altar. Behind the second was a room crowded with half a dozen small cots and one full-sized bed. Children's clothes lay everywhere. She picked up one badly soiled chiton before dropping it in disgust and stalking out. Then she opened the third door. The room beyond seemed to stretch away into infinity, and infinity was plated with solid gold. Blinding light reflected from the glittering walls. Xena threw one arm across her eyes until she got used to the dazzle. Even then, blink as she might, she could see no end to the room and nothing inside but a wide-mouthed golden brazier raging with flames. The fiery tongues leaped far too high for them to spring from any earthly fuel. Here was a mystery. Xena didn't have time for mysteries. Unlike Gabrielle, unless the mystery in question was coming straight at her with intent to kill, she was perfectly content to leave it lying undisturbed where she found it. She was backing out of the golden chamber and had the door half shut when she heard a voice within whispering. Xena's hand dropped to her sword. "Who's there?" she called. "Show yourself." "Oh, I would if I could. That I would love. That I would, lovely lady." It was a rustly, crinkly, dead leaves in a pile whisper. Xena stepped back into the golden chamber, squinting against the glare, and let her ears guide her to its source. "Over here, where I hang. Over here." A tiny chrysalis dangled by a silken thread from the ceiling just above the raging brazier, sparkling with the same precious coating as the walls. The flames might be supernatural, but their heat was real enough. Xena flung her chakram, severing the thread and bringing the chrysalis to her hand. On the return arc, she carried it back into a less garish part of the temple. All the while, the chrysalis buzzed and trembled. "Thank you, oh, thank you, lovely lady." "What are you?" she asked, setting it down on the pedestal holding the goddess image. "A friend, a friend, a friend, a friend." Xena gave the chrysalis a brisk shake. "Slow down. I can barely understand you." "Oh," said the chrysalis. It no longer buzzed like a hornet's nest. In fact, it sounded cranky. "You've got your nerve, girlie, shaking me like that. I'm an old man, not a baby's rattle. You ought to treat me with a little more respect." Xena shook the chrysalis again harder. "Don't call me girlie, and we've got a bargain. My name is Xena." "An old man, huh?" "A very small old man from the look of things." A torrent of unbelievable complex and old-fashioned profanity gushed from the chrysalis, curses so venomous and ferocious that the warrior princess was shocked to realize that she was blushing like a milkmaid. "Stop! Enough! Rein it in!" she shouted. "That'll be enough of that out of you, unless you want to find out whether I can hurl you clear to Corinth." The chrysalis subsided. "Well, you didn't need to go casting aspirations on my manhood," he grumbled. "That's not what I meant when I called you small, and you know it," Xena replied. "Now stop fooling around and tell me what happened to you. Why are you trapped in this thing, kept in this temple? What's your name?" The golden husk in her hand trembled with a sigh. "My name is Tithonus. Once I was a mortal man, strong and handsome and young, the son of King Leomedon of Troy. One day when I was out tending my father's flocks, we all tended our father's flocks in those days, even princes like me. None of this slacking off you get from young people nowadays. Nothing but whining and excuses and sassing their elders and get back to the sheep," Xena cut in. "Yes, well, there I was, tending my father's sheep, just as the day was breaking, when all of a sudden I beheld the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. It was love at first sight, and not just what you whisper snappers call love, ha, like a tangle of ferrets in heat. You are. Not like love was in my day, when it was pure and noble and clean, and I'll bet if I throw you into the air and hit you just right with the flat of my sword, I could send you sailing all the way to Thrace, Xena remarked, tossing the chrysalis up and down casually. As I was saying, I saw this charming girl and fell in love with her on the spot. There was no wonder. What was incredible was that the first words out of her sweet, sweet mouth were a declaration of love for me. And who do you think she was, eh? A goddess, no less. Eos herself, the rosy fingered Lady of the Dawn. She whisked me away to be her love and begged the gift of immortality for me from Zeus himself. We lived happily, had 3 fine sons, and I even helped her raise 4 of her own lads from her previous alliance. Boreas, Zephyrus, Eurus, and Nodus, gods of the 4 great winds. I taught them everything they know. The chrysalis stood up on end as if strutting with pride. It shows, Xena said, deadpan. Especially when they blow hard. Yes, especially when they. What did you say? I said you did pretty well for a shepherd prince. So when did happily ever after change into stuck inside a cocoon? The chrysalis didn't respond at once. Xena got this distinct impression that it was embarrassed. Finally, it said, remember the part where I told you about how Eos got Zeus to grant me immortality? Eos is a lovely girl, a very lovely girl indeed. A man couldn't ask for a sweeter mate or a more passionate lover, but the dear lass has one teensy wincy flaw. She's a tad impetuous, doesn't think things through, leaps before she looks, forgets to tend to the details, and sometimes it's all in the details, such as remembering to ask Zeus to grant you eternal life and eternal youth, Xena concluded. She stared at the chrysalis. You poor chump. Again, the chrysalis sighed. It didn't take long for Eos to notice that I was no longer the man she married. First there were the wrinkles, then the aches and pains, the gray hair, followed by certain other changes that are none of your business. I have to say she was very supportive in spite of my even when I couldn't. Well, that's none of your business either. As soon as she realized her mistake, she went back to ask Zeus to restore my youth. But he said she should have thought of that in the first place. Wouldn't give her the time of day. That's awful. You don't know the half of it. At first, Io said that it wouldn't make any difference to her, that she'd always stand by me, that love would find a way. But as the years rolled on, and I continued to age, she was forced to face the hopelessness of her situation. I didn't die. I couldn't die. But I did begin to wither away. I shriveled up a little more each day, my body growing more feeble, my bones more brittle, my skin as crinkly as a shed snake's skin, my voice the weak piping thing you now hear or barely do, and Eos was still as young and attractive as the day we first met. Very, very attractive. Xena didn't need the Delphic oracle to interpret what Tithonus was getting at. She left you for another man. Left me? If only she had. It would have been kinder in the long run. Instead, she placed me in this gilded husk. You hold and hung me where you found me, for safe keeping. Xena's heart was moved to pity. I wish there were something I could do to help you, Tithimus, she said. Nice of you to offer. Matter of fact, there is. Kill me. There's a good girl. But you're immortal. I knew you were going to say that. But you could try. It could only be polite to make the effort. I don't think so, Xena said. But I will take you with me. She tried to find the chrysalis, tried to fit the chrysalis into her belt pouch, but it was full. So she tucked it into the front of her armor and said, It's no good you're just hanging around here. The known world's a big place for all we know. The answer to your problem somewhere out there. I'll help you find it. Take your time, Tithimus murmured happily from his new resting place. I think this may be the beginning of a beautiful Xena, help! Gabriel's voice rang out through the temple just when I was getting comfortable. Who are you calling a nymph? Xena spat, facing down the goddess. It's only a temporary title, Eos said patiently. Nymphs always take care of children. Zeus himself was raised by Cretan nymphs. Speaking of Cretans, I don't think child care is going to be an issue here, Gabriel said. The three of them stood ringing the fountain while 6 pairs of eyes watched slowly from the surrounding shrubbery. I'll say it's not, Xena affirmed, giving the dawn goddess a look fit to put her lights out for good. I don't know who these children are that you've been jabbering about, but Gabrielle and I are not nymphs, and we are not babysitters. What we are is leaving. Come on, Gabrielle. We've got to get the thieves. We've got to get the thieves. Xena started off, but she hadn't gone more than 30 paces when something struck her a mighty blow squarely in the breastplate, sending her toppling head over heels all the way back to the base of the fountain. She was on her feet in an instant, teeth clenched, sword drawn, searching for the assailant that wasn't there. Eos giggled. What's so funny? That was one of my children, Eos replied. Boreas, god of the north wind. As you can see, he doesn't need anyone to babysit him. He's all grown up the same as his 3 brothers, and every one of them is more than willing to help me. Reason with hotheads like you. You assume you know what's going on, but you haven't any accurate idea of the situation at all. Her beautiful face was insufferably smug. You're the dawn. Enlighten me, Xena said dryly. She doesn't need babysitters because her children aren't children. Gabrielle broke in. They're men. Little men? Xena was taken aback. Now there's a novel idea, even for a goddess. Don't be silly, Eos tossed her golden curls. Boys, boys, come here. There's someone I want you to meet. The foliage rustled, twigs snapped underfoot. One by one, 6 small boys, ranging in age from 2 to 7, emerged from the bushes. There was something distinctly unchildlike about them. It wasn't just their eyes, which held neither shyness nor fear. When meeting strangers, it went further than that. Xena watched amazed as the 2-year-old came boldly up to her face. She'd never before seen someone manage to toddle and swagger at the same time. When he took his thumb out of his mouth, laid hold of her hand, and kissed it with a gallant flourish, it was as if someone had opened an amphora full of understanding and upending it over her head. "You're the one," she cried. "You're Eos's new lovers." "Not exactly," said Gabrielle's old acquaintance, Orlo. "Not at the moment, anyhow," said the oldest looking of the bunch, the gangly towelhead. "She calls us her husbands," another added, "which is neither here nor there, seeing as how in our present condition the role or husband or lover is unthinkable." "I should hope so." Gabrielle was appalled. "You can do more than hope so." Eos gave her a cutting look. "You can rely on it. How dare you think such dreadful things of me? I'm a respectable goddess who just happens to need a husband sitter." Xena concluded. "Very respectable." She was joking, but Eos reacted as though she'd spoken pure logic. "Then you do understand. Oh, I'm so glad, but of course you would. I saw you come dashing out of my temple. You must have spoken with Tithonus. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm not about to make that mistake again. No, you're going to make a whole bunch of new mistakes," Gabrielle muttered. There was nothing at all wrong with Eos's ears. "What did you say?" "Let her alone. She's right and you know it." One of the boys spoke up. He was a red-haired tyke, all blue eyes and baby fat. Solemnly he approached Xena and Gabrielle, bowing low. Myron of Thebes, at your service. I used to be King Creon's favorite harper until I had the misfortune to take a holiday from my work and travel down to this scrofulous neck of the woods. There I was, minding my own business, drinking from that little stream over there, when suddenly this brazen creature appears before me and declares, 'Oh, you're cute. Want to be my husband?'" Xena raised an eyebrow at the goddess. "Not too subtle, are you?" "I believe in the direct approach," Eos responded, laughing haughtily. "And why shouldn't I? I am one of the Olympians. All wise mortals know what a great honor it is to be chosen to consort with us. And what a lethal mistake it is to decline that honor," Miron said. "As a harper, I've heard all the songs about the fates of mortals who try giving gods the brush off. So of course I consented. At the time I didn't see the harm in it. I assumed that she was after a quick liaison, no more than a night's entertainment. I knew I wouldn't find her beside me at dawn. Ah, but little did I know, for no sooner had she given me a most rigorous audition, so to speak, but she announced that was great, you'll do, and with that she turned me into this." He touched his chest. "She did?" Xena was puzzled. "How?" Before the former harper could answer, Eo stepped in. "That'll be enough out of you, Maron. Goodness, do you think you weren't happy with the prospect of eternal life? In this shape?" The harper opened his arms wide. appealing for judgment to Xena and Gabrielle. It interferes with my work in ways you can't imagine. I am a harper, a poet, and a musician combined. My profession makes certain creative demands, especially when I need to compose a new song. Inspiration doesn't come easy. We're colleagues, Gabrielle cried eagerly. Where do you get your ideas? I used to get them every week in a 6-pack of amphorae from Arcadia, but now do you realize just how little wine this body can hold? Stop belly aching, Eos said. It's just temporary. The next time I ask Zeus to grant eternal life and you to immortal, I must be sure I've picked the right man. Eternity's a long time to spend with a loser. As soon as I make up my mind, I'll have Zeus return the rest of you to your proper ages. And when will that be? Maron wanted to know. I'm not making any more snap decisions, Eos maintained. What do you have to complain about? Don't I see to your every need? You don't, Narian replied. Galacia does, or did. I take it that Galacia was your previous husband sitter, Xena asked the goddess. The dawn goddess sighed, and a refreshing breeze stirred the clearing. Poor dear. She was great. She was such a great influence on the boys. So kind, so patient, practically perfect in every way. Until she cracked, said Miron. Neo spread her hands. I blame myself. Nymphs are such fragile creatures. I should have given her a vacation. Only you were afraid she wouldn't come back, Xena concluded, and received a divine scowl for her observation. What happened to her? Did Boreas and his brothers let her escape? No, she's still here. Or maybe I should say, still there. Eos pointed at the fountain. She was turned to stone? Gabrielle stared at the statue, horrified. And all those poor children with her? Nonsense, Eos said. Do you think I collect husband candidates by the buttload? And she wasn't turned to stone. We haven't had a Gorgon wander through these parts for ages. I made the statue, one of the little boys piped up. His wavy brown hair failed to cover the distinctive star-shaped birthmark on his right temple. Not some dumb Gorgon. And if you think that's easy to do when you're this size, think again. Xena looked at him narrowly. That birthmark, I know you, she said at last. The only person I ever saw with such a mark was Endemon of Naxos, the famous Sculptor. The famous sculptor? The boy echoed. Since when am I famous? Since you vanished mysteriously 15 years ago? Xena said, everyone thought you drowned. The whole island went into mourning. Really? Endemon's eyes lit up. To my death help sales? They can't find enough of your works to satisfy the demand. Xena told him. An original Enderman is worth a fortune. This piece here could fetch a cartload of drachmas. She nodded at Galasia's statue. Oh, Enderman beamed. Eos did not like being ignored and cleared his throat loudly to recapture her attention. As I was saying, Galacia was the daughter of a local river god. One day the boys were acting up more than usual. She couldn't take it. Childcare is not for the faint-hearted. So in her distress, She called upon her father, and he rescued her the only way he knew how, by turning her into a spring. She's got a slightly metallic aftertaste, but she goes well with olives and goat cheese. Then the fountain's not the fountain of youth? Eos laughed. That's only a myth. So, how did you make these men young? Gabriel asked. And if you have that power, why didn't you use it on your first husband? Xena added. Yeah, Titimus buzzed from inside her breastplate. Eos cocked her head, puzzled. That sounds like Titimus, but how could he get out of my temple? Before the chrysalis could utter another sound and give itself away, Xena clapped one hand to her bosom as if shocked by what she'd learned and insisted, well, why didn't you? The goddess gave a small, I must be hearing things frown, then replied, it wouldn't work on him. The lying little snip, the chrysalis hummed angrily. Xena's hand still in place, muffled to the paltry voice, so that even she could barely hear it. She never even tried it on me. What do you have to do when it does work? Xena asked the goddess. It's really very simple, sort of a one-shot deal. Ea said, I just need to tell a nice young man, you'll do. Give him a little kiss and bang, he's a child again. Never any older than 2. When the smoke clears and he ages much more slowly than normal children. So even though I can't use the power twice on the same person, I'm still get oodles of time to make my choice. The power's a gift from Zeus, something he gave me to make me stop nagging him about poor old Tithonus. I'm surprised he was so generous, Xena commented. When Zeus wants someone to shut up, he usually sends them a thunderbolt, not a gift of power. Let's just say that there are some days that the Father of Gods and men doesn't want morning to come any faster than it needs to. Eos smirked. Cute, Xena said flatly. All right, Eos. Can we try being reasonable about this? I don't have a whole lot of mornings to spare between now and when we're due in Thebes. I'm not going to be your new husband setter, but I'm still willing to help. Since you can't make a decision about which one of these men's the right choice, let me do it for you. Pardon me, but I don't believe your title is Xena Warrior Marriage Expert, Io said coldly. Fine, Xena shrugged off the insult. Then let Gabrielle do it. Let anyone do it, only let it be done. You're a goddess, but you're acting like a headless chicken. Stop dithering. Choose. And let all of us get on with our lives. The light surrounding Eos darkened and crackled until she looked like the dawn of doomsday. I don't take orders from mortals, she snarled. I give them. I ordered you to stay here and take care of my potential future husbands, or else I'll kill me. Xena finished for her. Others have tried, even gods. Kill you? The goddess was startled at the thought. You can't take care of my darlings if you're dead, but you will do it because, she vanished, you'll have someone of your own to take care of too. The goddess' words filled the sky. Eos dawned suddenly right behind Gabrielle, seizing Xena's companion firmly by the shoulders. She lowered her head until her lips were inches from Gabrielle's cheek and purred, "You'll do too." As the goddess's lips puckered to deliver the kiss that would seal Gabrielle's fate, the tranquil dale shattered with the wild ululating sound of Xena's war cry. Thrusting one hand down the front of her breastplate, she scooped out Tithonus's chrysalis, tossed it into the air, and with the flat of her sword sent it zooming across the clearing in a blazing line drive that smacked Eos right in the mouth. The goddess hurled backward, landing sandals up in the fountain just as the air shuddered with the report of a tiny golden husk bursting asunder, streaks of fire and vast clouds of smoke erupting from the shell, engulfing the temple grounds. When the smoke cleared, a tall, handsome man of about 35 stood beside the fountain, offering Eos a hand out of her soggy predicament. The goddess staggered to her feet, wiping water out of her eyes. "Ty, Ty," she quavered blinkingly. "Sweetie, is it really you?" Gabrielle sidled up to Xena and murmured, "T." Xena just shrugged. "I'll say it's me, little missy," the transformed Tithonus declared sternly. "A fine howdy do it is when a man can't get his own wife to make him feel young again, huh? But since I got another woman to do it for me, I suppose next you'll be mad about it." "Oh, darling, how could I ever be mad at you?" Eva threw her arms around Tithonus's neck, half laughing, half weeping for joy. "I'm so happy I never would have had the nerve to try the power on you. I was afraid of what might happen if I tried, you being so old and all. I thought that if I did attempt it, the shock of snapping all the way back to being a baby would have killed you." "Kill me?" Tithonus repeated. "But you had Zeus make me immortal, remember?" Eos clapped a hand to her brow. "Duh." That was not enough to suit Tithonus. Maybe it wouldn't have slipped your mind if you hadn't been so busy running after every beefy young piece of baklava between here and Sparta," he shouted. "Maybe if you really wanted me back, you could have figured out how Zeus's gift actually worked. Maybe you'd have noticed how whenever you snapped a man back to boyhood, he only lost a certain portion of his years, a fixed percentage of his real age, which is why when the power worked on me, I didn't come back as a baby. Drat it, woman! Why didn't you just do the math?" Io stuck out her lower lip. "But Titi, sweetie, math makes my head hurt." Snuggling up so that her wet clothing plastered her body to his, she added, "Isn't Titi mad at his little easy wheezy?" Tithonus tried to stay angry, but Eos kissed him, on pure purpose this time, and he came up smiling. Sweeping her up in his arms, he said, "Sweetheart, we've lost too many years already. Let's not waste any more." She started for the temple, holding her close. "Aw, you boo! Yoo-hoo!" Gabrielle called after them. "Aren't you forgetting something?" Tithonus turned. The six turned. The 6 little boys stood drawn up in a row between Xena and Gabrielle. Eos giggled. Goodness, what did I ever see in any of them? She said, lifting her eyes to the heavens. She called out, O Zeus, father of gods and men, hearken unto me, everything's settled. I made up my mind. Thanks for all your help. Put them back the way they were when I found them, and see you tomorrow. Xena quickly covered her nose and mouth, anticipating 6 puffs of smoke, but this time it pleased Zeus to restore Eos's rejected matrimonial candidates without benefit of flashy effects. One moment they were boys, the next men. Orlo looked down. I'm not naked, he observed. You were expecting to be? Xena asked. I didn't think this chitin would stretch that much. I just assumed that when I grew up, my kitty clothes would rip apart, revealing me in all my astonishing beauty. He turned to Gabrielle. I can imagine how disappointed you must be. Orlo, Gabrielle said, patting him on the shoulder. Zeus may have made you grow taller, but I don't think you're ever going to grow up. Now, where do we go? One of the men asked. Anyone know the way to Thebes? Xena suggested. I should hope to tell you I do. Mirren the thief spoke up. Surveying the others, he announced, You're all welcome to come along unless you've got other plans to be. Enderman, the sculptor, nodded his head in Xena's direction. According to her, I've got a great career waiting for me. I guess Thebes is as good a place for a dead artist to live as any. Then it's settled, Gabrielle said cheerfully to Thebes. To Thebes, they all echoed, and fell into line behind Miron and Xena as they marched up the hillside. Xena turned to King Creon's harper and asked, Are you sure you know the shortest way to get there? Of course I do, Miron replied positively, although it has been years since I left. Roads change, paths get washed out. Bit by bit, his confidence dribbled away. I think we're supposed to go north, or was it west? My memory's not so great when it comes to this sort of thing. Oh well, never mind. All at once, his optimism was back. Even if we do get lost, you can always ask for directions. Xena screamed, stripped every leaf from every willow in the grove of Eos, goddess of the dawn. Oh, okay. The second one is Argonaut by Josepha Sherman. Argo shifted her weight uncertainly from foot to foot, cocking first one hind leg and then the other. She straightened ears up, snorting nervously. Nothing, still nothing all around her. The forest glade looked and sounded like a normal forest glade in a normal night. The moon was rising, sending glints of light flicking through the leaves. Argo, like every horse, didn't need the moon to know there was a fox hiding behind that bush and a squirrel in that tree. Nothing alarming. But the sense of wrongness was still there, subtle as a fly tickling her neck. Argo snorted again, then took a deep, questioning breath. The forest smelled of normal night, too, and under it Argo caught the comforting, familiar sense of her human and her human's yellow-maned human friend. She had tried to warn them earlier, sidling and whickering, but the humans hadn't understood, and she hadn't known what more to do. Her human had scouted the area, sword in hand, but had soon returned, shaking her head. Nothing out here, Gabrielle. No humans. No monsters. Not even signs of any animal predators. What's making her so nervous then? I don't know. The full moon, maybe? It gets to animals the way it gets to people sometimes. Her human had scratched Argo under the jaw, and the mare had sighed and relaxed. Nothing bothering her now. Everything's all right, Argo? And just then, everything had been all right. Now, something wrong. Where? What? Argo brought her head up, suddenly ears shooting up in new alarm, then moved silently away from the humans to the other edge of the glade. The other stood there, blazing white and beautiful in the darkness, neck arched and wings folding softly. Pegasus, Argo acknowledged in the silent speech of horses. Argo. They touched noses in greeting, breathing in hoarse fashion into each other's nostrils. Pegasus smelled strange and familiar in one, bird and horse, but the scent also bore a hint of worry, and Argo drew back, snorting. What? She asked. What is happening? The great white wings opened in a rush of feathers, then folded. Pegasus shivered, settling the feathers back into place. There is great need to come. But Argo balked, glancing uneasily back at her human. She sleeps. Pegasus' ears flattened in impatience. There is no danger to her, no danger to either human. The white tail snapped with an audible crack. Come, I call you in the names of the stallion and the mare. Argo sighed. In the names of the stallion and the mare, I must obey. She followed Pegasus down through the forest together, silent as two deer, to where it thinned away to the ocean shore. Thinned away to the ocean shore. Standing on the verge of the sand, watching the silver of the moonlight rippling on the waves, Argo flared her nostrils, taking and testing breaths of salty air, salty water, decaying and living green things, normal air, normal sea. No, there was also strangeness. What now? She asked Pegasus wearily. Now we hide, Pegasus said with an uneasy sort, and wait. They stood together behind a great jagged rock, and Argo froze, tail clamped down with nerves, trying not to even stamp a foot or shiver her golden hide. Something was in the water. Something was coming to shore. Something that smelled of horse and death at the same terrible time. Every nerve screamed to Argo, run! But at the same time she knew with a sureness deeper than any instinct that to run was to attract that death's attention and bring it down on her. The being rose from the water, a great black shape in the night, dripping silver in the moonlight. It stepped out onto the shore, shaking the water from it in quick, bright drops, but no moonlight could lighten its utter blackness. The black horse, Argo breathed. The black horse, Pegasus agreed. The monster was twice the size of a mortal horse, with not even a glint of light from its eyes. Something huddled at the feet of the black horse, a small, terrified creature, bleating like a frightened foal. No, Argo tensed. There is nothing born from a mare. That is nothing born from a mare, not horse, Pegasus told her, but horse kin. That is a Kirin foal. Kirin? Yes, Argo realized the furry coat was multicolored, and that was the first tender nub of a horn on the small forehead. This is wrong. That does not belong here. Pegasus twitched an ear. No, it does not. It is the wrongness, and it must be allowed to go back to its rightful place in Cathay. They fell silent as the black horse prowled around its small, terrified captive. Why had the black horse taken it? Argo could not puzzle that out. Perhaps a human might understand such things as the need to take something free and keep it as a prisoner. What has this to do with me? She asked Pegasus. You must free it. Me? Fortunately, the roar from the sea hid that astonished sound. Why? I am no one. You are a hero. My human is a hero. True. Pegasus was too calm. Argo insisted. My human is a great fighter, a true warrior, a true hero. I am a mortal horse, born of mare and stallion. Why me? No human can harm the black horse. Then what of you? You have wings. I am of air. The black horse is of water. We cannot fight. Argo shook her mane. Not me. I cannot do this. You are mortal. Yes, I wish to stay alive. By the rules, you are the one. Argo pinned her ears back flat to her head, baring her teeth at Pegasus. Why should I do this? Why should I not just gallop back to my human? Pegasus never moved. Because you, of all horses in the realm, you of all your mortal kind, felt the wrongness. Because you know also that there is also always a balance. Day, night, predator, prey, always. There must be this. There must be this, or there is only chaos. If the Kirin is not freed, there will be no balance. Argo kept her ears pinned, flat back, but she let her lips relax to cover her teeth. She knew that what Pegasus was saying was truth. Since no horse, not even one of air, lied, she knew that what must be done, and by whom, and she did not wish to do it. But this hesitation was how a human might think. A horse was too wise to quarrel with what must be done. Yes, Argo said simply, and with no more than that, she gathered her feet under her and charged the black horse at a full gallop. The black horse was so astonished by his sudden attack that it went back on its powerful haunches. Argo raced past and dared a sideways bite. Only a snatch of hide and hair, tasting foul as spoiled meat. The black horse roared, whirling and snatching at her mane. Argo squealed as she lost strands of hair and twisted free her hooves, scrabbling in the sand. The black horse snaked its head forward, jaws gaping, teeth glinting, and Argo shield sideways. She lost her footing, rolled terrified that she wouldn't find it again, and scrambled up, hearing the black horse's jaws snap, shut behind her. Its breath smelled of blood. Pushing off with her hind legs, Argo lunged forward, right under the black horse's neck. She tried another bite, aiming at the jugular, missed completely, and kept going. The black horse was fast, but it surely was too big to be as nimble as she. Yes, Argo pivoted on her haunches and lunged forward again, this time at the black horse's unguarded flank. She whirled and whipped out both hind legs in a savage kick. The black horse grunted from the impact. Staggering, it roared in rage, then snaked its head out again, teeth raking Argo's side. She leaped sideways, sides heaving. This could not continue. She was swifter, but the black horse had more strength. Yes, but she had seen her human fight against bigger foes, stronger foes, and win. Swift and clever. Argo stopped short, spinning around to face the black horse. Ears flat back, she neighed challenge to it, and brushed straight at it. The black horse reared, looming over her. All her instincts cried to her to shy aside, but Argo raced blindly forward. Before the black horse could crush her beneath its hoofs, she was at its hind legs. Before it could swift its weight to kick, Argo bit down with all her might on a fetlock just above a hoof, bit down through the hair and hide to the flesh. The black horse screamed. It kicked, and Argo was tossed off her feet. Still clinging to the black horse's fetlock, it kicked again, and Argo went flying, the night whirling about her, and landed with a great splash in the waves. She surfaced, snorting out water from her nostrils. This was the black horse's realm. Breathless, the mare began swimming back. The black horse, but the black horse was hobbling, three-legged. Argo wriggled back her upper lip in triumph. Her fierce bite had crippled a tendon, and now there was a chance. Fighting against the water's pull, Argo swam on the crest of the last wave, letting it carry her to the shore, then leaped out of the water into the sand, barely bothering to shake the drops from herself. The black horse hobbled about to face her, teeth bared, and the tiny Kirin was right in its path. Argo leaped sideways, left, right, like a playing foal. Left, right, forcing the black horse to shift balance again and again. Panting sides, heaving, Argo darted forward and leaped back, taunting the black horse, drawing it away from the Kirin. But she was beginning to show slow. Argo felt teeth like fire rake her side and shrilled her pain. But as it lunged at her, the black horse overbalanced. It came down hard on its injured foot. Its leg gave way, and the black horse fell with a thunderous crash. I cannot, Argo said. I cannot. But she forced her exhausted body into one last run, straight at the fallen black horse. This time her teeth closed on its throat, and Argo hung on. No matter how the black horse pitched and struggled, she hung grimly to its throat. There was nothing else, nothing but cling and cling and cling. Suddenly there was no black horse. With a thud, Argo landed on her side on the sand, then struggled up. She sniffed at a stream of blackish water pouring back into the sea, then wrinkled up her nose in disgust. A thunderous clapping made her look up. Pegasus hovered for a moment on wide white wings, then came slightly down to a landing beside her. What happened? Argo asked wearily. I did not kill it. It does not die, but it cannot reform to solid shape for many an age. And the Kirin, the mare panted, but a small, multicolored form was at her side, eyes wide and wise beyond mortality, looked up at her. The budding horn touched her injuries, the scrapes and bruises, and they were gone. The small nose touched hers, and breath sweet as new hay took the weariness from her. Then the Kirin was gone. What? Argo asked. The Kirin has returned to its home, Pegasus explained. The balance is safe. The winged horse glanced sideways at Argo. And you, as I said, are a hero. What now? Now, Argo said with a great gusty sigh of relief, I go back to my human. Hero or not a hero, I am still a horse. Gabrielle yawned, stretched, and sat up, brushing leaves out of her hair. Rubbing a hand over her eyes, she asked, Xena? Over here with Argo. Getting to her feet, Gabrielle stretched again, arms over her head. Scratched an arm, she went to join Xena. Anything wrong? Not a thing. But, well, look at her, Argo. Looks downright smug, doesn't she? Gabrielle frowned, then shrugged. I guess. Yes, almost as though she knows something we don't. What secrets could a horse possibly have? Ah, well. Xena ran an affectionate hand along the line of Argo's jaw, scratching her under the chin. Too bad that horses can't talk. Guess we'll never know what you've been up to, eh, girl? Argo relaxed and almost asleep under the caressing hand, only snorted. Oh, we could do one more. Bard and Breakfast by Greg Cox. Oh, that was a good, interesting story with the horse, though. Argo. Apollo's blazing chariot, known to less poetic souls as the sun, had barely risen in the east when a familiar foot nudged Gabrielle awake. It's your turn to start the fire, the warrior princess reminded her. Never a morning person, the young bard groaned plaintively before crawling out from beneath her sleeping fur. Goosebumps sprang up over her exposed arms and legs. The foremost clearing where she and Xena had camped for the night seemed much chillier than she remembered. Shivering, Gabrielle hastily donned a leather bodice and skirt, pulled on her boots, and looked around the empty glade. All seemed quiet enough, with Argo remaining safely tethered to a nearby laurel tree, and Xena, having gone back to snooze upon her own sleeping mat lying next to Gabrielle's, all that could be glimpsed of the legendary warrior princess was a crown of raven black hair poking out from beneath her heavy fur blanket. At last night's campfire, alas, was now nothing more than a heap of cold ashes, and the prospect of lighting a new blaze struck Gabby as altogether too daunting this early in the morning. Tell you what, she called to her dozing companion. I remember spotting a well about a garter of a league back. But that abandoned temple, I'll go refill the water skins if you'll make the fire. A grunt emerged from beneath Xena's furs. Gabrielle took that as a yes, and gathered up a pair of empty water skins, tucking them under her arm as she set off down the lonely country trail they had traveled the night before. Wild gooseberries grew alongside the path, and she picked a handful of the fresh nest berries, tucked them into the cleft of her bodice. The task turned her sleepy thoughts toward breakfast, and Gabrielle began to think about what she wanted to make once Xena got the fire going. That it would be she who prepared their morning repast was not a question. Despite her grogginess, Gabby wasn't addled enough to let Xena cook. Just some simple gruel, she speculated, or maybe a few of those fruit-filled dumplings Xena liked so much. Rounding a corner, she spied the location she'd recalled, the ruins of a fallen temple presided over an overgrown, weed-clotted field that also contained a solitary brick well several paces in front of the temple. Gabrielle paid little attention to the crumbling marble edifice in the background. Her short hike had left her thirsty, and she prayed to Hermes, god of travelers, that the ancient-looking cistern had not run dry years before. From the looks of the sky, they could not expect rain anytime soon. Just as well, she thought, who, except maybe a hippopotamus, wants to hike through mud? Before she could draw nearer to the well, however, a lone figure detached itself from the shadows beneath the cracked and splintered pediment of the ruined temple and hurried toward Gabrielle, arms outstretched. Instinctively, the bard reached for her weapons, then realized that she had left both of her sai back at the camp. Thankfully, the approaching figure didn't appear too threatening, for the bright light of dawn revealed an elderly woman clad in a shapeless black robe that fell past her feet and trailed through the low scrub carpeting the open field. "Help!" the old woman cried out in obvious distress. "For the love of the gods, help me!" All apprehension fell away, replaced by an urgent desire to come to the stranger's side. "What is it?" What is it? Gabrielle called, dropping the empty skins into the ground. She ran across the field until she came close enough to touch the old woman, who grabbed onto the bard's shoulders with surprising strength. The woman's hands were cold and dry, but Gabrielle was more concerned by the fear and desperation in the crone's voice. "What's the matter?" she asked intently. "How can I help?" "My granddaughter," the agitated woman said. The hood of her cloak obscured her features, but Gabrielle got a vague impression of an angular face with and anguished, anguished lips. "I just turned my back for an instant. Only a heartbeat, I swear, and she fell into the well." The panicked grandmother tugged on Gabrielle's arm, pulling her toward the waiting well. "You have to help her. She's only 3." "By the gods!" Gabby exclaimed. Her heart went out to the unfortunate woman. She had heard of similar tragedies occurring before. Hadn't Hercules saved the child from a well only a year ago? Gabrielle briefly considered running to fetch Xena, but decided to check the situation out herself first. There might not be any time to spare, she realized, letting the old woman lead her to where the little girl had disappeared. "I can always get Xena later if necessary." Built of chipped, weathered bricks, the circular housing of the isolated well rose as high as the youthful bard's waist. A battered tin bucket lay neglected in the dirt at the base of the well. "That's where she fell. Poor little Samel." The stricken grandmother pointed frantically at the open shaft within the brick housing. Anxious words tumbled from her, aged lips mixed with soul-rending sobs. "I thought I could hear her crying before, but now I'm not so sure. My ears, they're not what they used to be." Hoping with all her heart that they were not already too late to rescue the lost child, Gabrielle leaned over the edge of the time-worn brick barrel. "Smell?" she shouted down the yawning abyss, trying to keep her voice as gentle and reassuring as possible. Despite its volume, peering into the tenebrous shadows, she glimpsed a faint glint of sunlight reflecting on the surface of the murky waters far below. A long fall, she swiftly judged, not necessarily a killing one. It was possible the child could have survived. "Samil, can you hear me?" Her cries echoed within the empty depths of the well, and Gabrielle strained to hear the reply she prayed would come, but insisted two strong hands suddenly shoved Gabrielle from behind, and she found herself tumbling over the edge of the well into the beckoning pit. A cold wind swept past her startled face and golden tresses as she plunged head first toward the subterranean pool below. "Oh no," she thought a second before it hit the water. "Not again." "Gabrielle?" Xena stirred beneath her furs, then sat up suddenly and looked around. Her beloved bard was nowhere to be seen. "Gabby?" Tossing the warm and cozy furs aside, Xena stood quickly, stretching her muscular limbs and tacking the stock of the campsite. Battle-scarred bones cracked loudly, into place as the warrior princess readied herself mentally and physically for whatever the day had in store for her. She said something about going for water, Xena recalled, but that what's keeping her so long? Gabrielle should have been back by now. She realized unless something had happened to her. Xena scowled and reached for her armor lying on the ground not far from her and Gabrielle's sleeping mats. Over the years, she had learned to trust her warrior's intuition, and right now those instincts were telling her that Gabrielle was in trouble. The fates know wouldn't be the fates know wouldn't be the first time. Xena amused Riley, even though she's definitely gotten better at taking care of herself. Despite Gabrielle's improved survival skills, Xena's worries only worsened when she spotted her comrade's lethal sigh lying, forgotten by the bard's discarded bedroom. The matching blades silently testified that, whatever had befallen Gabrielle, she had clearly been unarmed. Remind me to scold her for leaving them behind, Xena told herself crankily. Once I get her back safe and sound, moving with the speed and efficiency born of long experience, Xena donned her armor, the handcrafted leather and brass work fitting snugly over her tall, athletic frame. The morning sun was taking his own sweet time, warming the clearing, and Xena would have killed for a convenient hot spring, but there was no time to light a comforting fire. Securing her sword and scampered upon her back, and clipping her chakram to the catch at her hip, she strode over to where Argo was tethered. You stay here, girl, she whispered to her golden mare, untying Argo's reins so the horse could be free to run if danger visited. Unless you hear me whistle for you, hopefully I won't be gone long. Although I wouldn't count on that, she reflected grimly. As an afterthought, she tucked Gabrielle's pair of sai into her own boots before setting out in search of her missing sidekick. Xena hastened down the trail, marching briskly at first, then breaking into a run as she caught sight of Gabrielle's boot prints in the dust and dirt ahead. Although tempted to call out to her friend, she kept her tongue silent, lest she alert any potential foes to her rapid approach. The advantage of surprise was not one she intended to sacrifice needlessly, especially if Gabby really had run afoul of some nasty customers. As she dashed toward the well, Gabrielle had mentioned concern for her companion's safety, added adding speed to her already powerful legs. Xena could not help wondering who might have ambushed the bard. Ares, Discord, Alti, frowning, frowning. The warrior princess conceded that there were too many possibilities to count. Between the two of them, she and Gabrielle had accumulated a veritable horde of vengeful enemies, any one of whom might have chosen today to settle some old scores. Then again, she thought, maybe you're only talking a couple dozen armed mercenaries or slavers. That wouldn't be too tough. Practically a day off, really. The broken down temple and nearby well were just where she remembered, but any hope Xena had entertained of finding Gabrielle peacefully drawing up some fresh drinking water were immediately extinguished by the fact that not a trace of the absent bards could be seen anywhere in the vicinity of the well. All right, Xena concluded, her dire suspicions confirmed. This is no false alarm. Fortunately, Gabrielle's abductors couldn't have gone far. Xena guessed that the bad guys had at most an hour's lead on her. Unless there's some sort of God involved, she admitted. In that case, Gabrielle could be halfway to Chin by now. Hoping fervently that today's adversaries were merely mortal, Xena took a moment to inspect the decrepit remains of the old temple. Perhaps the ruins held some clue to the bard's whereabouts. The collapsed shrine had clearly seen better days. Toppled ionic columns lay atop one another like fallen tree trunks, while cobwebs stretched across the looming stone portico. Judging from the peacock motif on some of the surviving portions of the frieze, Xena deduced that the temple had once been dedicated to the worship of Hera before falling into its present state of disrepair and neglect. Couldn't happen to a nicer goddess, the warrior princess thought with chilly satisfaction. She still hadn't forgiven Hercules' nasty stepmom for that business with Prometheus a few years back. Xena wondered momentarily if Herc himself had wrecked this particular temple. It looks like his work, she thought approvingly. Still, she couldn't imagine why the Queen of the Gods would have any sort of grudge against Gabrielle, who had played a very small role in Prometheus's liberation and done nothing to cross Hera since. Besides, Xena wasn't feeling that particular tingling sensation she usually felt when there were gods or goddesses about. So maybe those pesky Olympians had nothing to do with Gabrielle's disappearance. We can only hope, Xena thought emphatically. As far as she was concerned, most gods were nothing but trouble. Forgetting the temple for the moment, she turned her attention to the actual well and the area around it. Piercing blue eyes scanned the ground at the base of the well, searching for the telltale signs of a struggle. To her vast relief, not a drop of blood was in evidence, only two sets of tracks that led from a point near the trail up to the very edge of the brick well. The first batch of tracks clearly belonged to Gabrielle. Xena would recognize those petite boot prints anywhere. The other tracks were a good deal more peculiar. There were no actual footprints as such, just a wide trail of flattened earth and underbush about half an arm's length across and tempered at one end. An expert tracker whose skills rivaled Artemis herself. Xena required only a few moments to identify the source of that serpentine track. Her fears for Gabrielle's safety heightened to an almost unbearable level as she realized what exactly the unarmed bard had come across, and she spit out the word with a mixture of dread and disgust. Lamia. Stunned by her impact with the underground pool, Gabrielle barely heard something else land with a splash. A few heartbeats later, then slithered through the rock-wash water toward her. She was still sputtering and coughing up water when that same something grabbed her by the back of her bodice and began tugging her through the darkness at the bottom of the well. Within moments, Gabrielle felt herself dragged onto the mossy shore of some subterranean lake. The damp, slippery stone beneath her felt strangely smooth, as though polished by the frequent passage of unknown parties. Where am I? Gabrielle wondered as she lay sprawled upon the burnished rock. Water streamed from her blonde tresses into her eyes. What is this place? Cruel fingers seized a handful of Gabrielle's soaking hair and yanked her upright. On your feet! Someone barked impatiently. Gabrielle scarcely recognized the voice of the old woman who had besieged her aid only minutes before. No trace of grief or frailty remained in the crone's harsh tones. This way, the woman said, poking Gabrielle in the back with the point of a knife. The drenched bard spit out one last mouthful of foul tasting water. Let me guess, she said bitterly. There was no missing granddaughter. Bright girl, the deceitful hag cackled, but not bright enough, it seems. She gave Gabrielle a rough shove between the shoulder blades, causing the bard to stumble forward. Get going, the old woman said. I haven't got all day. Prodded by another painful jab from her captor's knife, Gabrielle hesitantly made her way into what felt like some sort of cavern or corridor. Behind her, a small shaft of sunlight filtered down from the well overhead. But the farther she walked from the underground reservoir, the blacker the darkness became, so that Gabrielle had to wonder how the crone could see at all, when the squinting bard could barely discern her own hands for her. The old woman clearly knew where she was going, though, as she steered Gabrielle through a maze of cool, clammy tunnels that led to only God knows where. Feeling her way with her hands, Gabby's palms brushed across what felt like tuff, a soft volcanic rock that hardened when exposed to air. Empty horizontal niches, large enough to hold an ordinary sized body, lined both sides of the tunnels. Catacombs, Gabby guessed, probably carved out by whomever built the temple above. Certain cults, she knew, preferred to bury their dead underground rather than simply cremate them. But why did all the burial niches appear to be empty? No matter how long the catacombs may have been abandoned, shouldn't there still be some rotting skeletons tucked away in the stone shelves? Despite the disadvantage posed by the Stygian blackness surrounding her, Gabrielle considered trying to disarm the knife-wielding woman behind her. There were a few Amazon fighting tricks she knew that might catch the crone by surprise, but even if she successfully turned the tables on her captor, the bard reasoned where would she be then? Trapped in the pitch-black catacombs with no idea how to get out. Better to wait perhaps until a more promising moment arose. Beyond her doubts about the cramped confines of the catacombs, however, Gabrielle also had reservations about the true nature of her foe. She had not forgotten the unexpected strength of the seemingly infirm old woman's hands, which led the alert bard to suspect that the creature behind her might be far more than she appeared. All the more reason she decided not to start a fight before I have a better notion of what I'm up against. That's what Xena would do, I think. And why was it? Gabrielle wondered that she could hear no footsteps behind her, only the unnerving rustle of something heavy sliding across the stone floor. Gabby shivered, and not just from the chilly temperature of the tunnels. Her trembling fingers silently slipped between her breasts as she did what she could to help Xena find her. Finally, after many twists and turns, Gabrielle spotted a flicker of light ahead, coming just around the next corner. The bent glow of a torch or lamp painted dancing shadows on the rough hewn catacomb walls. Ah, the gleeful crone cackled. Home at last. She poked Gabrielle impatiently. Hurry, girl. Grateful to see any light at all, the bard needed little urging to hurry around the curve before her. Relief quickly turned to horror, though once she caught sight of what lay beyond. By the gods, she whispered aghast. The narrow tunnel opened up into an enormous cavern, decorated in a singularly ghoulish fashion. Human bones, most of them brown with age, covered the walls and ceiling of the vast underground chamber, arranged in intricate patterns and designs. Slender humeri and fibulae laid knob to knob, framed macabre rosettes composed of artfully arranged ribs and vertebrae. Broad scapulae flared like calified, calcified wings alongside mounted human skulls, while yet more skulls, too numerous to count, were piled neatly to form sturdy altars and pedestals. Even the elaborate chandeliers hanging from the ceiling were constructed of narrow collarbones and radiating outward from the inverted pates of discredited skulls. Burning candles blazed atop the dry bones, illuminating the charnel contents of the spacious cavern. Hades himself, Gabrielle marveled, could not have conceived such a morbid celebration of death and decay. Nor could the appalling bard help noticing yet another unnerving detail here and there among the hundreds upon hundreds of moldering bones festooning this awe-inspiring ossuary. A few fresh white bones gleamed like polished ivory. Gabriel didn't want to think about how those newer relics could come to join their ancient cousins. Well, the old woman demanded, her cold breath under the back of Gabriel's neck. What do you think of my masterpiece? That you could have that you have way too much time on your hands? The bard couldn't turn her gaze away from the ghastly spectacle. Countless pairs of empty sockets stared back at the bard from beyond the grave. If nothing else, the mystery of the empty biers had now been solved. The supposed grandmother of little Samel had surely looted catacombs to create her grotesque art. Fool! The irate crone barked. Unappreciative mortal! She sank her sharp nails into Gabrielle's shoulder and spun the startled bard around so that Gabby faced her mysterious captor at last. A gasp escaped the young woman's lips. The supposed crone had discarded her concealing cloak, revealing her true inhuman nature. The bizarre creature before Gabrielle resembled an old woman, only from the waist up. Below her sagging, weathered dugs, only partially hidden by her long gray hair, the monster's body transformed into that of an enormous snake, adorned with silvery, iridescent scales. Her serpentine tail stretched out behind her nearly as long as Gabby was tall. A lamia, a lamia, the bard recognized at once. She had heard of such fearsome creatures, although she had never laid eyes on one before. According to the ancient tales, the lamii on one the lamii were the unholy spawn of one of Zeus's human mistresses, transformed by Hera's jealous wrath. A chill passed through Gabrielle as she recalled that the Lamii were said to feast upon the blood of mortal men and women. I might as well be back among the Bacchae, she realized with a sinking heart. The danger was just as great. What? No scream? The Lamia mocked her. Her yellow eyes were more like a snake's than a woman. A forked tongue flicked past her lips as she leered at Gabrielle. You're braver than most, little girl. Well, I've had a lot of practice at this sort of thing, Gabrielle said glibly, while her eyes searched the cavern for a possible escape route. A gigantic open arch outlined by a trellis of piled skulls attracted her attention to the far end of the chamber, and she thought she could even smell a hint of salt water, leading her to suppose that another larger tunnel led to an open cave somewhere along the nearby coast. How fast can the Lamia move? Gabrielle wondered, thinking about making a run for it. Unfortunately, serpents weren't exactly known for their slowness. Curse the fates. The frustrated bard thought, why couldn't she be half tortoise instead? She was still weighing the possibilities of a dash for safety when the sound of heavy footsteps rocked the cavern, coming from the very tunnel through which she had hoped to flee. The massive tread of whatever was coming rattled the bones upon the walls and ceiling and shook the floor beneath Gabby's boots Now what? She pondered in alarm, feeling as though she were suddenly caught between Sala, and Charybdis. A bloodthirsty Lamia wasn't bad enough? Apparently not, as a moment later a gargantuan and horribly familiar figure stomped into the cavern. The Cyclops was so tall that he had to duck his head slightly to pass through the enormous archway, and the club in his hand was as thick as an oak. An old and ugly scar stretched across the ample brow where his single eye should have been, and he sniffed the dank air of the gloomy, unhallowed crypt with a pair of grotesquely big nostrils. "What's that?" he rumbled, licking his lips with a tongue the size of a 10-pound slab of steak. "Do I smell mortal meat?" Um, hello again, Gabriel said, waving her hand weakly. "You!" The blind Cyclops roared. "I know that voice. You're the chatty little morsel that tricked me years ago." In the very first episode. Anger contorted his already homely features. "You said you were going to kill Xena for me. Er, will you believe I just haven't gotten around to it yet?" Gabrielle stepped backward, involuntarily almost treading on the Lamia's tail. In fact, she had talked her way out of this very same Cyclops' clutches a few years back, right after she met Xena for the first time. Long time no see. The Cyclops growled irritably, clearly not one to let bygones be bygones. "Well, isn't this a pleasant reunion?" the Lamia remarked with fiendish amusement. She took Gabrielle by the arm and, none too gently, led her over to a pedestal made of piled skulls, where she forced the outnumbered bard to sit upon the stack of grinning death's heads. The Lamia tied Gabrielle's wrists together with a strip of coarse leather, whose origins did not bear thinking about. "My colossal friend and I have worked out a neat little arrangement over the last few years," the creature explained. "He gets the meat." The Lamia patted Gabby's well muscled abs, "and I get the blood and the bones." With her armored back pressed hard against the inner wall of the well, and the soles of her boots pushing against the bricks on the opposite side, Xena carefully inched down the vertiginous shaft. She had no doubt that she was heading in the right direction to find Gabrielle, since neither Gabby's nor the Lamia's tracks had led away from the well. It was obvious which way they had gone. Xena only hoped that her purloined friend could hang on to all of her blood until the warrior princess could catch up with her. Xena's back was already aching from her awkward descent, but she wasn't about to dive headfirst into an underground pool without checking it out first, especially with Lamie about. "Gabrielle's going to owe me a good massage after this is all over," she thought. "What is it with her and bottomless pits, anyway?" Gabrielle seemed to have a remarkable propensity for falling down gaping holes, chasms, volcanic craters, whirlpools, and such. I swear, she could find a way to fall from Tartarus itself. Such irritated musings merely masked a deeper anxiety. Please let her be all right, she hoped passionately. Gabrielle was her closest and dearest friend, and the most precious thing in her life. The pain of losing her again would be more than I could bear. Despite the painful protests of her abused spine and leg muscles, Xena hurried faster down the well. The Lamia, Lamia, if I can pronounce it right, was feeling Gabrielle's bones through her clothes and skin, figuring out how best to fit them into her grand design. What a lovely clavicle, she cooed, pinching the bar's collarbone with her cold, dry fingers. Such a graceful, elegant curve. Thank you, I think, Gabby muttered, permitting the indelicate inspection for as long as it kept the two monsters from having her for breakfast. I have to keep them occupied until Xena gets here, she resolved, confident that her remarkable partner would stop at nothing to rescue her. You know, she began, trying to start a conversation with the preoccupied Lemia. I'm an artist, too, a bard. The serpent woman looked up from Gabrielle's collar, a flicker of interest in her reptilian eyes. A bard, you say? She stroked her pointy chin with bony fingers. I have to admit that I haven't heard a good bard in years. She threw back from her defensiveless captive. The Lemnia's her human half resting atop a stack of scaly coils. Very well then, girl. Tell us a tale. Hey! The Cyclops objected. He rose to his feet from an oversized throne of skulls, looming over them like a living mountain, albeit one clad in crude woolen garments. What about breakfast? An immense hand rubbed his mammoth belly. Please, Ophelia, I'm famished. Patience, Alemia hissed at him. I caught this dainty delicacy, conjunctivus. Will feast on her when I choose. The Cyclops opened his mouth to argue further, but Ophelia silenced him with a withering glance. This won't take long, she promised. That's what you think, Gabrielle thought. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her wits and went into full bard mode, projecting her voice so that it seemed to fill the vastness of cavern. In a time of ancient gods, warlords, and kings, a land in turmoil cried out for a hero. Her chakram clutched between her strong white teeth. Xena swam across the murky, stagnant reservoir at the bottom of the well. So far, the subterranean pool did not appear to hold any lurking Lamii, nor any other nasty surprise. But the warrior princess wasn't taking any chances. As soon as her keen eyes adjusted to the gloom, she struck out for what appeared to be a shallow beach leading to an unlit opening in an otherwise unbroken wall of stone. That looks like the only way out, she concluded. Powerful strokes swiftly brought her to the shore, where she returned her chakram to its place at her side. then retrieved a small pouch from a separate hook on her armor. The bag of greased, watertight leather held flints and a candle, which Xena promptly used to create a flame to see by. Damp footprints, obviously. Gabrielle's pointed her straight toward the cave entrance she had noted earlier. Xena nodded, silently, her deductions vindicated once more. Candle in hand, she stepped warily into the apparently empty tunnel. All her senses were at a heightened state of awareness, primed to detect the slightest hint of any waiting death trap or ambush. The desolate catacombs reminded her of many others she had explored in her travels, although she noted the curious absence of any human remains in the burial niches. Her habitual scowl deepened when the tunnel she was following first offered her a choice of branching corridors, leading no doubt to yet more detours and decisions. Xena paused to consider the problem. If these catacombs were at all like their counterparts in Rome and elsewhere, the network of tunnels could well extend for leagues. A careless person could easily get lost forever down here, but Xena had never been described as careless. Crouching down between two clammy, tough walls, she meticulously searched the floor for clues. Gabrielle's wet boot prints had long since dried out, and the smooth stone floor did not readily retain ordinary tracks. Xena's eyes widened, however, when she spotted an odd yellowish stain smeared into the ground in front of the left-hand corridor. The stain was still wet and sticky to the touch, and she tasted it experimentally. Gooseberry! Xena's razor-sharp memory instantly summoned up an image of the fruit-bearing bushes growing alongside the trail to the well. Good girl, Gabrielle, she thought, pride and renewed hope surging within her heart. I should have known she'd find a way to guide me to her. The warrior princess sprang from the floor and hurried down the tunnel, marked by the squashed gooseberry. She found still more berries along the way, invariable, invar- invariably left behind whenever the trail veered off in a new direction. Xena could practically feel Gabrielle's presence in the lonely, sepulchral corridors. Hang on, she pleaded with her stolen friend. I'm coming. Callisto again? I thought she was dead. The bewildered Cyclops thrashed his coarse black hair in confusion. The dandruff the size of snowflakes littered the cavern floor. Pay attention, dolt, Ophidia snapped at her elephantine accomplice. Hera brought her out of Tartarus. Conjunctivus just looked more adrift. Hera? What about Ares? Ares brought her back to life the first time. Hera brought her back the second time. The Lamia snorted in disgust. Can't that humongous brain of yours follow a simple story? Exhausted from declaiming nonstop, Gabrielle welcomed the momentary interruption in her narrative. Her mouth was as dry as the legendary deserts of Arabia, her throat equally parched. Yet she feared to risk asking her monstrous captors for a drink of water. Frankly, she didn't want to do anything that might bring up the subject of refreshments. I have to keep them thinking about the story and not about their stomachs. Ophelia quickly noted that her captive bard had fallen silent. "What's the matter with you?" she demanded, giving Gabrielle a sharp poke with her finger. Pal Coils rustled impatiently. "Keep going, girl. I want to know what happens next." Feeling distinctly like a human pincushion, Gabrielle swallowed hard and launched once again into a tale. "I've faced tough audiences before," she thought wildly, "but this is the first time I've ever had to orate for my life." The Xena's candle sputtered, inciting the umbrageous shadows to close in on her. The warrior princess tipped the lightened taper, pouring off the pool of molten wax that had threatened to drown the lighted wick. Droplets of liquefied tallow splattered the floor of the catacombs, as well as the toes of Xena's leather boots. She blew gently on the tiny flame, restoring it, and the encroaching darkness receded once more. But a problem far more serious than a faltering candle now faced her. An, an intersection with no helpful gooseberry to point her in the right direction. Gabrielle must have run out of berries, Xena guessed, or else the Lamia got wise and confiscated the rest of her supply. In either event, the warrior princess was on her own now. No point searching for footprints. The cavern floors were far too hard, and Lemii didn't even have feet. Instead, Xena closed her eyes and sniffed the air. At first, all she smelled was dust and mildew, the odor of antiquity, but wait, was that the faint aroma of salt water tinging the musty atmosphere of the tunnels? Wetting a finger, she held it up experimentally before each of the branching corridors. Yes, there was definitely a slight but detectable breeze coming from the pathway on the left. Possibly there was another way out of the maze. Despite the many twists and turns it had already taken, Xena felt certain that the feeble breeze was not emanating from the pool beneath the well. She had an almost uncanny sense of direction, and would have known if she had circled back toward where she'd begun. The draft, with its hint of the open sea, had to lead to somewhere else, maybe to Gabrielle and the Lamia, leaving a trail of cooling wax behind her. Xena rushed down the left-hand path. She prayed to whom she wasn't sure that she was heading the right way, and that the loathsome Lamia had not already used Gabrielle to quench her foul thirst for human blood. "If that creature has so much as scratched Gabby," the warrior princess thought ferociously, "I'll separate her snake half from her human parts." How long can I keep the story going? Gabrielle worried. Desperately, she had already exhausted all the adventures she and Xena had experienced during their first 3 years together, and there was still no sign of any imminent rescue. What if I run out of stories before Xena gets here? The weary bard realized she had to keep her narrative going for as long as possible. "I can't leave anything out, no matter how painful." And lo, after many artist journeys and adventures, the warrior princess and the bard were reunited in the leafy forest of Potidia, tears as salty as the brawny deep stained their cheeks, and their wounded hearts pounded loudly in their chests like the beating of mighty drums. And then, wait a sec, interrupted. A titanic scowl twisted his ugly face. You fell into a pit of fire, you and your demon spawn offspring. You should have been burned to ashes. A giant foot tapped impatiently against the bone littered floor of the crypt. How in Zeus's name did you end up in the woods? That's a very good question, Gabrielle conceded, wishing she had a more convincing answer. I got better. Bah, Ophelia spat at forked tongue, flicking angrily. That's no good. You cheated. She looked away disdainfully and nodded at the seated cyclops. Go ahead, eat her. Yes, the one-eyed giant said, far too enthusiastically for Gabriel's peace of mind. He lurched to his feet and groped for the bound bard. A trickle of drool the size of a small waterfall spilled from the corner of his bloodberry mouth. Breakfast time! Wait! Gabrielle called out instinctively. She raised her hands in front of her, even though they were still tied together at her wrists. I haven't got to the best part yet. I don't care, Conjunctivist snarled, baring yellow teeth that looked as big as tombstones. I'm hungry enough to eat four of you. Just don't shatter the bones this time, Ophelia chided him, shaking a warning finger at her colossal accomplice. They are no good to me broken, let alone all gnawed upon. Desperately, Gabrielle tried to recapture the attention of her monstrous audience. Wait, you haven't heard about the time we were trapped on Shark Island, or when Xena defeated Popeye's army? Alas, the Salvador Cyclops didn't appear interested in either women's prisons or Roman politics. He loomed over Gabrielle like a carnivorous mountain. Huge, hairy, brutish palms reached out for her. Keep your hands to yourself, Eyeless, the defiant voice shouted fiercely. All heads turned toward the back of the crypt where Xena stood framed, chakram in hand, beneath an arch of skulls. She smirked at the Cyclops she had blinded years before. Seen any good sunrises lately? Xena! The giant roared, his nagging appetite displaced by a homicidal rage. He charged at the sound of the warrior prince's voice. I'll tear you apart with my bare hands. You and what guide dog? Xena mocked him, blowing out her candle. She leaped into the air, effortlessly clearing the head of the Cyclops, lumbering toward her. Executing a perfect mid-air flip, she landed feet first behind the vengeful Cyclops, less than 100 paces away from Gabrielle and the Lamia. Gabrielle, she yelled, get away! Alerted to Xena's new location by her urgent cry to her friend, Conjunctivus spun around awkwardly and started stamping wildly on the floor before him. Brittle bones rattled alarmingly upon the walls and ceilings, but Xena deftly evaded the giant's murderous feet. Her blue eyes shone with feral glee, and a wolfish grin stretched across her face. The warrior princess never looked so happy as when she was fighting a battle to the death. Here goes, she warned, flinging her chakram At the Cyclops' enormous head, the gleaming steel ring flew from her hand, spinning through the air like a discus hurled by an Olympic champion. Conjunct- Conjunctivus, watch out! Ophelia warned her sightless partner, and the Cyclops ducked instantly, so that the chakram appeared to miss him, whizzing past his scalp to strike the ceiling instead, where it shattered a skeletal rosette, then came ricocheting back at Gabrielle. Ha! The Lamia crackled triumphantly. So much for the warrior prince's legendary aim. Most people would be afraid to have a disc of razor sharp metal zooming at them, but not Gabrielle. She knew Xena never missed. As the chakram became whistling through the air, the bard raised her bound hands above her head, pulling her wrist apart as much as the leather strap would allow. Sure enough, just as she had expected, Xena's most versatile weapon sliced cleanly through Gabrielle's bonds before striking the wall behind her and bouncing back to its armor-clad mistress's grip. Thanks, Gabrielle shouted, yanking her wrist apart and springing to her feet. She scrambled away from the bony pedestal, tried to put some distance between herself and Ophelia, who was now hissing in rage. Thankfully, the bloodthirsty snake woman was more intent on her partner's battle with Xena than with her escaping prisoner. No problem, Xena said casually. The Cyclops tried to smash the warrior princess with an enormous fist, but she somersaulted between the giant's legs, then turned toward her newly liberated sidekick. Their gazes met across the roomy crypt, and Xena reached into her boots with both hands. Cat, she yelled to Gabrielle. The bard spied two shiny metallic objects hurling toward her and reacted with reflexes honed by hours of diligent practice, grabbing both side by their handles and snatching them out of the air. Gabrielle's chosen weapons felt strong and snug within her grip, the deadly blades flashing beneath the flickering light of the bone chandeliers. "All right now," she enthused, "no longer merely a helpless hostage. Time to kick some Lamia butt." The depraved serpent woman was still trying to help her cyclopean cohort get his hands on Gabrielle's elusive rescuer. "Where is she?" the frustrated giant roared. His groping paws had found his stupendous club, which resembled a battering ram more than a simple kugel, but the warrior princess remained one step ahead of him. "Tell me where she is." "To your left. No, higher," Ophelia hollered, tracking Xena's every move with her cold reptilian eyes. The massive club obeyed the Lamia's instructions without hesitation, lashing out again and again at the agile warrior princess, who leaped and rolled and cartwheeled away from every blow. "Now a bit more to your right. Yes, that's it. You almost got her that time. Try again. A little lower. Just one blow from the ridiculously large club, Gabrielle realized, would be enough to flatten even Xena. I need to cut off Conjunctus's eyes." at their source. Jumping atop a typically hideous altar, she kicked a dusty brown skull at Ophedia's head. The dislodged death's head hit the distracted serpent woman squarely on the chin, its yellow teeth chattering as it bounced off the lamia's jaw and into the stone floor of the crypt. Hey, Grandma Scaly, Gabrielle taunted, slashing the empty space between them with her twin sigh. Don't forget about me. Xena wished the Lamia would just shut up. Keeping out of the way of Conjunctivus and his big stick was challenging enough without that withered old snake coaching him from the sidelines. Come on, Gabriel, Xena thought. You know what to do. For a few more moments, the Lamia kept on shouting instructions like an Athenian guardsman directing traffic past the Parthenon. Xena listened as intently as Conjunctivus, making sure she never stayed put long enough to let the revenge crazed Cyclops zero in on her. Adrenaline poured through her veins, along with the intoxicating joy of combat. But Xena knew she couldn't keep this up forever. Her eyes scanned the spacious crypt, taking in every detail of the cavern turned battleground. Already a strategy was forming in her mind. Yes, she thought coolly, eyeing the grisly chandeliers overhead. That could work. Her mind quickly calculated the angles and directions involved. Now, if Gabby would just take care of that Lamia. Right on schedule, the interfering snake woman fell silent. Xena didn't need to look back over her shoulder to confirm that the Lamia now had a fighting mad bard on her hands. She had faith in Gabrielle's ability to cover her back. After all, Gabby was a former Amazon queen. Conjunctivus was acutely aware of his partner's sudden hush as well. Ophelia, he demanded. The Cyclops held his club high above his head so that its squat tip scraped the ceiling. What's the matter with you? You have to tell me where Xena is. Sorry, big boy, The warrior princess informed him, poised to spring away from the upraised club the instant it began its descent. The giant's enormous shadow seemed to cover the entire floor, but Xena only grinned. All the harder. You're on your own now. One blind Cyclops against the destroyer of nations? She almost felt sorry for the poor brute. Almost. A wicked kick caught Conjunctivus right below the kneecap, causing the giant to howl in pain and fury. He stumbled forward, nearly dropping his club on his own mammoth skull. Kill you, crush you, grind you up, the Cyclops bellowed, lumbering after Xena like a minotaur in a china shop. Bones rained from the roof of the cavern as the heedless giant rampaged through the Lamia's ornate ossuary. Conjunctivus shrugged off the falling debris, unable to think of anything except obliterating his relentless nemesis. Smash you like a bug. Come and get me. Xena dared him, delivering another vicious kick before darting out of reach again, facing the Cyclops. With only 50 paces away, she flung her chakram at a pillar of skulls that rose behind Conjunctivis's right shoulder. The god-forged ring shattered the towering column, the cacophonous clatter causing the giant to spin around and turn his back on Xena, who, getting a good running start, raced straight up the Cyclops' broad back. Caught off guard, Conjunctivus frank, 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 frantically fumbled behind himself with his free hand. But Xena was too fast for him. Don't you hate it when you can't scratch those hard to reach places? She taunted the Cyclops as she used his yard-sized shoulder as a springboard to flip into the giant's head. Xena's boots touched down on Conjunctivis's balding pate, just in time to catch her chakram on the rebound and return the weapon to its rightful place on her hip. Yeah! The warrior princess's ululating war cry echoed through the crypt as, after giving Conjunctivus a headache-inducing stomp for his troubles, Xena launched herself off the Cyclops' head and into the air. Her outstretched hands caught onto the bony arms of one of Ophedia's ghastly chandeliers. Xena turned the hanging lamp into a trapeze, swinging away from Conjunctivus until the soles of her boots brushed the ceiling, then came arcing back toward the unsuspecting Cyclops. She waited until the last minute before letting go of the chandelier and tossed her chakram at the same time. The whirring missile sliced through the chain that bound the swinging lamp to the roof. Xena's boots slammed into the Conjunctivus's chest only seconds before the untethered chandelier collided with the giant's head. Its overturned lantern setting the Cyclops' receding hairline ablaze. almost, almost there. Hey, Taylor. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to see it. I'm glad you showed up, Taylor. Yeah. Conjunctivus landed flat on his back, rushing a stack of neatly organized ribs and mandibles to power bright orange flames devoured his short black hair before spreading rapidly to his filthy, grease-stained garments. Xena leaped off the fallen giant's midsection, fire literally licking at her heels. Arr! Arr! Maddened by the searing flames, Conjunctivus scrambled to his feet and fled the crypt, in a panic desperate to quench the blaze in the sea beyond the cavern. He smashed through the decorative trellis around the exit, scattering skulls everywhere before disappearing from sight. Xena was tempted to take off in hot pursuit, perhaps dispose of the man-eaten monster once and for all. But what about Gabrielle? Slaying the Cyclops came in a distant second. compared to making sure Gabby was okay. Letting the barbecue giant go, the warrior princess turned her eyes toward her bard. Gabrielle had succeeded in getting the Lemmy's attention. Impotent brat! Ophelia gnashed her fangs and uncoiled her long, serpentine tail. Her bony fingers were crooked in front of her, as though eager to gouge out the bard's sea green eyes. I should have drained your blood when I had the chance. Better luck next time, Gabrielle replied, assuming a defensive stance. Despite her bravado, the eerie appearance of the Lamia still sent chills down the sidekick's limber spine. She knew, though, that she had to keep the snake woman too busy to assist the Cyclops. No offense, but I have better things to do with my blood than feed an over-the-hill old snake. Ophelia hissed angrily, rising up on her tail until she towered over the diminutive bard, who gulped and tried to maintain a warlike expression. Could be worse, Gabby thought. I could be fighting a younger and sprier Lamia. But the elderly serpent woman was faster than her human half might lead one to believe. Her powerful tail whipped out unexpectedly, knocking Gabrielle's legs out from under her. Xena's sidekick fell backward, landing supine upon the rocky floor. The impact of the fall knocked the wind out of Gabby, and her precious sigh slipped from her fingers. Yes, the Lamia said sibilantly, like a striking cobra. The she creature lunged for Gabrielle's exposed throat, only to be abruptly distracted by the clatter of falling bones. A look of utter horror transfigured Ophelia's gaunt features as she watched the crypt's morbid ornamentation be reduced to charnel chaos by a sightless cyclops gone berserk. No! She shrieked in despair. My masterpiece! Gabrielle could sympathize with a fellow artist's anguish, but not too much. A skull thudded to earth not far from the bard's head, and she hooked her fingers into its empty sockets, then swung the skull at Ophelia with all her strength. The grinning memento mori slammed into the Lamia's own noxious noggin so hard that the desiccated skull broke apart into dozens of tiny fragments of bone. Ophelia's eyes rolled back, exposing blood-streaked whites, and the stunned Lamia collapsed into the bone-strewn floor. An instant later, a silver chakram separated the monster's head from her body. Hope you don't mind me finishing her off, Xena said, catching her weapon as it ricocheted back to her. You look like you were holding your own just fine, but I figured I'd spare you the messy part. Sure, Gabrielle said. Any time. She clambered nimbly to her feet, then searched the crypt with inquisitive eyes. What happened to the big guy? He's not going to be bothering anybody real soon, the warrior princess assured her, crossing the crypt to join the bard, especially now that he's lost his eye a second time. A growl almost as fierce as any mythological monster's escaped Xena's stomach. Nothing like a little morning mayhem to work up an appetite, she commented, dropping a strong but gentle hand into Gabby's shoulder. So what's for breakfast? Ha! Gabriel laughed. Let me tell you a story about that. Okay. Oh, 3 chapters. Yay. Oh, well, hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'm glad Taylor made an appearance. Oh, so I'll talk to y'all later. Hope you enjoyed the story, because a lot of it kind of oddly coincides with reality for me right now, especially seeing a lot of horses on Friends post, and in the first one, kind of a situation. Yeah, it's like the universe lines up stuff in a certain way. So, and I love my partner very much. And I'm not getting bullied away. I'll end it off right there. Everyone in my life that's making it perfectly better, thank you. I'm nothing without you. And it's horrible that people would do such a thing. Even monsters have hearts. Let's enjoy the time we have. Life is short, right? Ciao for now.